Hey guys, my name's Corbin Dunn, and this is an Autodesk Fusion tutorial on how to set up tabs in a project specifically for CNC woodworking. This is specifically for when you want to do 3D tabs, which are required when you want to hold a shape in the middle and machine completely around it, or potentially do double-side carving on it. Okay, let's jump into Fusion 360. So I have a new project, and it's in inches, because that's what I'm currently working in. Let's go ahead and insert a mesh, which is the thing that we're going to have to machine. And I'm going to do the wing tips. And this particular model, this STL, was exported as a meter format. So I'm going to import it as meters, even though I'm using inches. Let's go over and show the body. Right-click on the body, create components from bodies. So I have a nice component. Let's go to the front here, and let's go ahead and create a component for our stock. Creating a component for your stock is always nice, especially when you have a weird shape like this. Now I'm going to create let's show the origin here. Right click on the XY, XZ plane, create a sketch. Scroll over to our shape. Let's do the line component. And now I'm just going to start, oops, we don't want 3D sketch turned on. Yep. Let's create a line component. Okay, so I'm just going to roughly draw a box for my stock around the shape. Having 90-degree corners is pretty nice too. Alright, let's connect these guys here. Let's make sure everything's square by creating some constraints. Perpendicular. And that guy perpendicular over constrained, not a big deal. Let's start dimensioning things. So let's say the width of our stock is going to be 2.5 inches thick. We could probably get away with something thinner, 2.25, maybe even 2 inches. Now let's get aligned around it. And usually I would also dimension the other side. Looks like about 13 inches would fit this particular piece, 13 by 2. Alright, so we can finish the sketch. And so now we can go ahead and extrude it. And let's go on both sides. And we're just going to have it cover up our project, maybe be a known size like 6 by 4.5. Alright, so this is our stock. Go back over to our top, and a lot of times I want to see what I'm doing. So for my stock body, I'll right click on it, change the opacity control to be something like 20 or 30%, and this way I can kind of see through my stock and have everything here to work with. Okay, inside my stock component, I'm going to activate that again, which is going to make it hide stuff to not see. If I activate it like this, and we're going to create some tabs and move them around. So now I have my stock drawn, I'm going to right click on one of these faces and create a sketch. It's always important to name your stuff too, so we're going to call this a tabs. Zoom back over here. I'm going to hide that body for this, but before I do it, let's do a project. I hit P, and I'm going to select the bodies, select this, hit OK, and now I can hide my body. Alright, so now we want to create some tabs, and really it's pretty easy. We just are going to create some shapes of the size of the tabs. Hit C for circle, and let's do 30 thousandths of an inch for a tab. I'm just going to create one here, and then one here, and then we can move them around pretty easily after we create them. Alright, so I'm scrolling a little bit here. Let's finish this, and let's extrude the tabs. Select these guys, and now here's our tabs. I'm going to make them pretty big, so they're going to go into our wing piece into our model that we want to hold. And it should create 2 new bodies for the tabs. So this should be, I'm going to rename these. This is going to be the stock. And this is the tab. Tab. Alright, so at this point, back to activating my main component. And let's unhide the stock, although it doesn't matter at this point. So now you just want to place your tabs so that they are in a good location. And in general, you want them to be at a transition between one plane to another. So this tab here, I'm going to hide that stock. This one we could probably want to go up a bit. So I'm going to hit the move component, M for move, and let's select our component. In fact, I'm going to let's do, alright, select here. And now I can tweak the position of the tab a bit. So it looks like a pretty good spot for that tab. I'm going to hit OK. And let's take a look at this one. This one's a little bit higher, way too high. So hit M for move, select the guy I want to move, scroll it down, move it down. And you could also just rotate the angles. You could do whatever you want that makes it a better fit for your particular shape. This is one of the great, powerful things about this application. Alright, I probably wouldn't want it sticking up here because that's going to cause some issues when we do some machining. So we'd want to shrink the tab or move it out. So let's just fix that right now. I'm going to take this guy, move it out a little bit more. Alright. So how many tabs do you want? You probably want at least 4. And tab direction and grain direction is probably pretty important. If my grain's running lengthwise on this wing piece, then these tabs would be pretty highly likely to break because it'd be a thin cross grain. So I probably want a tab on the other ends and the sides. For now, we're just going to go with these basic ones. So let's add 2 more tabs. And now that we already have some selected, or now that we already have some created, we can easily move them. So I'm going to select one, hit create a copy, and oops, before I do that, let's activate the stock component again. Hit move, select my body, create copy, and then create a copy over here. Okay, M for move, select my body, create copy, move it. Okay, and then now I can go over here and place these guys. And placing them is, like I said, a little bit easier when you can see everything. So this one's going to be at the intersection of both sides, which is probably okay, right there. This one needs to be a little bit lower, so I select it, move, and we don't want to move the faces, we want to move the body. That orientation is a little weird, let's try it again. There we go. Let's move it right like that. Okay. Okay, for the purposes of this exercise, we're just going to have 4 tabs. Now let's take a look at the stock again. Do a top view. And the tabs go outside the stock, which probably isn't a big deal, but you can fix that. So you can just do a combine. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I hit combine, our target body is the tab. We're going to keep the tool. We're going to go to cut and use the stock as the cutter. And oops, I did it backwards. Undo. Let's go to combine, target body is the tab. We want to do a intersect, where the 2 intersect. Keep tools, intersect with this. There we go. Combine, select this guy, select the tool. Okay, combine, tab, body. Okay. And alright. So that's the basics on creating a few tabs. I'd probably angle this one here in this front a little bit better so it's not showing up on my piece and leaving something I have to sand off or shrink it. You could easily resize it. Okay, so now for machining. Let's give this some name, test tabs. Just saving the project. We're going to go over to the manufacturer workspace and let's create a new setup. Hit the setup button. I'm going to select my Avid CNC and that sets up the post processor. Alright, now the stock is huge, and so I'm going to go to the stock tab and go from solid, and I'm going to choose that stock I drew up. Now the axis origin is really weird, so we have to fix that. So instead of model orientation, I'm going to select, let's do Z and X axis. And so I can select the Z axis on my stock that I drew up. And it just flipped it upside down, so we want to flip it right side up. And let's select the X axis. Let's make that guy X. Let's set the origin point to be here. And so that's the bottom left of our stock. All right. Other things that I would normally do at this point is I would give my program my setup stuff for post-processing a name. So we could call this the top wing tabbed. And hit OK. Everything's selected. Let's not ignore that warning. Okay, so that's the other thing is for the model, we need to go ahead and select just the wingtip. All right. So while we're here, let's turn off the origin down there because we don't need to see that. All right. Okay, so we have our setup. Let's assume we would do two-side machining, so let's call this the top of the wing. And so typical machining, you probably want to do a 3D pocket or 3D adaptive. Let's just choose 3D adaptive. Let's just go ahead and do a different toolpath because that one's a little bit too slow. Let's do pocket clearing. 3D adaptive would be the same. And let's go ahead and select Avid CNC. Let's do a 3" 7" spiral upcut. Okay. Okay, pocket clearing is a lot faster to go ahead and machine things. Okay, first thing we see is, well, it didn't really do what we wanted. It's going to cut out the tabs because we can see these silver tabs appearing below. So that's not good. It also didn't machine the entire stock away, which is okay. We do want that to happen. Usually I like to machine everything away, and that's really because rest machining was checked. So if we uncheck rest machining, oh, I guess it wasn't that. It must be we can check stock contours. That's what we needed. Maybe, maybe not. All right, so here, it's not doing quite what we want because it would machine the tabs away. So the first thing to do, the first trick you have to do is just go ahead and you go to your geometry section here and you hit model. And then you can add some surfaces for it to assume is the model. Right here it's wanting to select the stock. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my stock. Oops, stock also has the tabs. Hide the stock body. So I'm going to go ahead, select my tabs to be part of the model and hit OK. So what this does is it will go ahead and machine everything away but leave the tabs. Now this isn't really what we want because if it machines away the sides of the tabs, it will just fall apart. So you want to limit where it's going to machine. And the only way to really do that I've figured out is go back to design, and we have to create a limit area. So I'm going to go back to my stock, and I'm going to go ahead and we have the main component active. Doesn't really matter too much. We create a sketch on the top of the stock, and we want to create an outline around our shape that we're machining, in this case the wing. And so I can't select the wing because it's a 3D mesh. And the way I work around this is I would manually draw a vector around the wing. That's one way. But I also know that this mesh is pretty low poly, so I can go ahead and go to the wingtip mesh, and I can right click on it, and, well, maybe not right click, we can select the mesh, go to mesh, modify, and we can do a convert mesh. So it's going to take that mesh body and convert it to be an actual regular shape inside of Fusion. Now this won't work if your mesh is complex. This is a very simple mesh. I also want to leave the original mesh for machining, so I'm going to undo. I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and on this one I'm going to do convert mesh. Okay, so I have a copy of the wing that's now an actual solid object in Fusion. So now I want this sketch that I added to be the limits. But it's in the wrong area in the timeline now. And there's a few ways to fix it. I could move it down to the stock. That didn't work. We're just going to delete it. We don't need it. We'll do it again. Right click on the top of the stock, create sketch again. We're going to call this sketch limits. So now I can hit P for project, and I'm going to select the wingtip, and projection link is optional. And so now if we hide all the bodies, we have the wingtip. And we could offset it, which might be nice to have the limits. So we will just do that inside of Fusion in the toolpaths. Right. Now we can go back over to manufacture, turn back on some bodies, hide this wingtip one, show our wing. Now if we go back to this toolpath here, we can set the machining boundary to be a selection, and the machining boundary is going to be this selection here. We want the tool to go outside the boundary, probably by the thickness of the bit at least. We could even go a little bit more, so let's go to 1/2 inch outside, and then hit OK. And so now, after it generates the preview, what we see is now it's actually machining around the tabs and leaving them intact. And that was the key thing. That was the most important thing. Machining boundary limitation and selecting the additional model parts to machine. This is applicable for a pocket toolpath and also for 3D adaptive clearing toolpaths. Now for a finishing toolpath, it's slightly different. So let's say that now we want to do a 3D, I don't know, let's say we do a 3D morph spiral. It's something I like. And in general, I like to use ball nose bits. So let's do a ball nose bit. Let's see here, like a 1/4 inch ball nose, I think is what I actually used for this project. And overall length, ball and mill right here. Okay, here's a 1/4 inch ball nose. So like before, if we just hit OK and let a toolpath generate, we can see what happens. And I already know what's going to happen, which I can kind of see in the toolpaths. It's going to actually machine and cut away these tabs. And it's still generating the stock. Let's give it a minute. Actually see what's happening. And while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and hide that sketch for the top. Right here, the limit sketch we don't need to see anymore. All right. So this 3D morph spiral, it's hard to tell, but what you see right here is you can see this silver part, which means it would cut the tab away. And it would be more obvious if it was actually on the back side because the tabs would just be completely disappeared. And So we need to fix that so it doesn't actually cut that away. And the way to fix it is going to be even easier. Double click on it to bring it up. And avoid machine surfaces. This is something that I wish the Pocket Toolpath had, because this is really all we want. We want to just avoid the tabs. And hit OK. And that is it. That will get you a finishing toolpath where they avoid the tabs. And while that's generating, I'm going to go ahead and copy the setup, paste it here, and we're going to create a new setup for the wing bottom to show how I would do the bottom side. Looks like the toolpath finished generating, and as you can see, it's got a lot of lifts around the tab, which is perfect. That's what we want. Alright, so let's start the bottom. I'm going to select and activate the bottom. So I copied this toolpath from the top portion. So we want to change a few things. We're going to go stock, and we're going to do from preceding setup, continue rest machining. I'm going to go ahead and rename this bottom. The bottom of the wing is the program name. And then we have to reset the orientation. So if this is the top, let's say we're going to flip our wing over like this. And we want this to be our origin here on the bottom. So I'm going to go and select this new origin, and now the Z needs to be flipped. So I uncheck that, and now that's flipped and that's correct. And so I can hit OK. And one of the nice things about Fusion is if you select and activate a particular setup, it will go into the orientation of the origin that I have here. So if I now want to go to the wing bottom, it flips it over, and fortunately the stock is hiding it, but now it flipped it over correctly. So here we just do the same things. I'm going to double click on the pocket. It should have copied everything over, so we don't have to do anything different except hit OK. And same with the 3D morph toolpath. Double click it, hit OK. And one thing we could do on the pocket at this point is we could go ahead and we could do, let's see, we could do rest machining if we wanted to, but I'm not going to because the computation is pretty slow. Alright, but this gives a more clear example of when I select it. Here's the roughing toolpath, and from here you can see it's leaving the tabs. And let's go to the finishing toolpath. Still generating the stock. Let's let it go ahead and do the simulation to generate it. Alright, so the stock finished. And so here we can kind of see the toolpaths and what it does. Here's the top. And here's the bottom. And that's it. So at this point, one of the things I would actually do is I go ahead and run simulations in Fusion 360 to make sure I don't have any collisions. And then I would take a little bit closer look at the toolpaths, make sure they're going to cut the way I want with respect to the grain, make sure the feeds and speeds are correct because I kind of just randomly selected something. And that's pretty much the basics. That's how I do 3D tabs in Fusion 360. Thanks everyone.